Welcome back to another video from Todata. My name is Chris van der Zwan, and yes, you have seen it correctly. The building blocks are back in business. We're talking about Windows Server licensing. Today, you probably think it's not the most complicated licensing model out there, but it's more complicated than you think. We do see a lot of misunderstanding on the SAM report, for example. Do we read number of cores? Do we read number of licensing? People are matching it to each other. And there are clusters not only running Windows Server machines, but also Linux and dev test. And when you're counting all virtual machines, you pay too much for your Windows Server licensing. So it's more complicated than you think. And there is a new licensing method, not really new, but not a lot of people are talking about it in the on-prem environment. It's the per virtual machine licensing option. So let's dive into it. So how do you license Windows Server? So Microsoft in general has one license option to go with, and that's the per core/call client access license. And that's how you are able to license Windows Server. So how does that work? So you need to license on a physical environment. You need to license the physical number of cores per processor with a minimum of 8 cores per CPU and with a minimum of 16 cores per server. So for example, if you have a machine with 2 CPUs, 8 cores each, you need to license 16 cores. And in other words, that's an 8 2-core pack license. And this is where it really gets complicated, or people try to overcomplicate things. Microsoft sells its licenses in packs of 2. But when we're counting and do compliance reports, we're talking about the number of cores. So what we do see is that people see, okay, I need 8 cores or I need 16 cores. So I'm ordering 16 licenses and they will get 16 2-core packs. So they licensed 32 cores instead of the 16 cores. So this is a tip. Look to the reports. Are we talking about number of cores, or are we talking about the number of licenses? Now, Microsoft has 2 different type of licenses. So they have packages of 2 cores, right? So one block of one license has 2 cores in it, or they come with a license that's bundled with a pack of 8 cores in one specific license. We do advise to only use one licensing method because you're overcomplicating, or better said in other words, you make your life more easy if you just choose one of them, and we go with the 2-core pack. And the reason for that advice is if you're mix matching, then you're lost in calculations, right? So take a server with 2 CPUs, 10 cores each, then we pick a bundle of 8 core, and then we need an addition of a few 2-core packs. Now you totally lose control of the number of licenses you need. You make yourself it's way harder to calculate the number of cores and in the end the number of licenses that you need to license for. If you just pick the 2-core packs, it's really easy, right? We have the 2 CPU, 10 cores each is 20 cores, split by 2 is I need 10 licenses. Simply as that. And then, if you have one environment, it's easy. But if you have 10, 20, hundreds different clusters, it goes up to 1,000 licenses, then it is hard to calculate. And it's easy then to or overpay on licenses or be incompliant because you didn't do your math correctly. So that's said about the core licensing and the advice to go for 2-core licenses. It's also then way more easy to bring it into Azure, because also there you then handle the same calculation. Okay, I have 200 cores available of Windows Server Datacenter licenses, which I can hybridly use into Azure, and then you can't make, or it's less common to make mistakes on your calculation efforts. So that's the per core license model and how that works. So take an example. We have one host. We have 2 CPUs, 8 cores. So that's a 16-core machine. So we need 8 licenses of 8 2-core pack licenses to license that environment. If we have a machine with 2 CPU and 10 cores each, there's 20 cores, then we need to license 20 cores, split by 10 packages of 2-core licenses. When we go to virtual environments, it's getting a little bit more complex because we need to add some other areas into our math, right? So first of all, we need to think of Windows Server Standard or Windows Server Datacenter Edition. Now, why do we need to think of that? Because Windows Server Datacenter comes along with unlimited rights of virtual machine on your licensed server, and Windows Server Standard comes with only the right of 2. So I think if I then have 4 or 6 virtual machines, I go directly with Datacenter. You could, right? But then you're overpaying again for your licenses because it's more cost effective to go then for the stacking Windows Server Standard licenses, which you could do in that case. But I will give an example later on in this video. Because you need to know a little bit more than that. Because what you could do is, okay, I pick a cluster of 4 hosts, and I have running 200 virtual machines. Okay, and directly, most likely then the Windows Server Datacenter is your most cost-effective option. But what we see is that the 200 virtual machines in that cluster are not all Windows Server machines. Right? That could be, there are Linux machines in there are dev test machines in there. There are machines for the purpose of System Center in that environment. So you need to eliminate those. So probably from those 200 VMs, you get 160 or 20 or maybe even only 5 Windows virtual machines left in that cluster to license. So that's important because then you choose your right path to go, which licensing scenario is the most cost effective, which edition, Datacenter or Standard, is the most cost effective to license your environment. Now let's pick a cluster of 4 physical servers, but before we go into that, there is a last topic what's key in your calculation is high availability, because Microsoft states that you need to license the maximum capacity what is able to in your cluster, which means if you have that cluster of 4 hosts with 200 virtual machines, Microsoft, it could happen that 3 out of the hosts will collapse, right, or doesn't work any longer, and then automatically, because you have high availability enabled, those 200 virtual machines will go over to one machine. So you need to license that machine for the 200 virtual machines. That said, so then you have your 3 prerequisites that you need to investigate on. Data is key in this sense. When you understand that, then probably your environment is looking as follows. We have the 4 hosts. Let's take an easy calculation with 2 CPU, 8 cores each, 16 cores in total per server. Then we have 50 virtual machines, and then we're calculating on which Windows Server Edition is the most cost effective. Now, there is a rule of thumb. When you have more than 14 virtual machines per host, which is the case in this sense because HA is enabled, so in theory, those 40 virtual machines could land on one specific host, then Windows Server Datacenter is the way to go. Now, how do we calculate that then? So we have 2 CPUs, 8 cores, 16 core per machine. So we need 16 times 4, so that's 64 cores to license. So we buy 32 2-core packs Datacenter, and we license this environment on the most cost-effective way. If we want to license that same environment with Standard, then it's 16 times 4, it's 64 cores to license, times 20, right? Because we had 40 virtual machines, but we have the right 2 virtual machines per Standard Edition, so we take 20. So we take the 64 times 20, and that's the number of Standard license that you need to license, and you can do your calculation financially, Standard versus Datacenter. But use the rule of thumb for above 14 virtual machines per server, it's Datacenter, and below that, Standard is the better, more cost-effective option. Another route that you can do, and that's quite a new one. It's common in Azure, so it's common in cloud environments to license and use this license right and the per virtual machine right. We do that in Azure, right? A lot of organizations, you probably also do that, because the underlying hardware we don't know. We don't have the specs. So this is also the reason why Microsoft brought this licensing option. But it's not only available for cloud environments, it's also available for your on-prem environment. So if in the scenario we took with the 4 hosts and the 200 VMs, 90% of your virtual machines is Linux and a small portion is dev test, and you only have 4 or 5 Windows Server machines. In the past, you needed to license the physical hardware, which could be very cost heavy in that sense. Right? So then we took some technical measurement, turn off HA, and only have that 5 VMs on one specific server. But that's not really flexible or scalable from a technical layer, but that's said. Now you have the option to only license those individual virtual machine, also on-prem, with the minimum requirement of 8 cores per VM, so not 16 as the on-prem and physical server. No, it's 8 cores per virtual machine, and you could go for that licensing option. I hope you have learned again something, and there is an opportunity maybe indeed if you have a low number of Windows Server machines in your cluster and use and fully utilize Linux or dev test environments. Another cost optimization strategy you could apply in your organization. As always, if you have any questions, reach out to me, reach out to the team. We're more than happy to help you and support you in optimizing your licensing costs. For now, wish you all the best and see you next week. Bye-bye.